What's that tattoo? A dragon? Laughter echoed across the training yard. The female recruit, skinny, quiet, nobody special, until physical training day when her shirt tore at the back, revealing a tattoo of a classified special unit, erased from records in 2012. The colonel walked over, saw it, then said without looking at anyone else, "That ink is classified. She's not here to train." Joint Military Training Facility Zone 9, nestled in the heart of the desert wasteland region. Sand stretched endlessly in every direction, broken only by the concrete barriers and metal structures of the compound. Elite training class. Nearly 120 cadets from across the nation. Only one female among them. Her name was Samara Trent, 26 years old. Her file read simply, "Transfer from Logistics Division." No family contacts listed. No criminal record. No high-level military background or commendations. From day one, absolutely no one talked to her. She ate alone at the far corner of the mess hall, trained alone during group exercises, slept quietly in her bunk like she didn't exist in this world. No standout physical features, no attempts at friendship, no memorable moments. The nicknames they gave her behind her back, Silent Sue, because she never spoke unless directly addressed Coffee Girl, assuming she'd end up serving officers, military cosplayer, thinking she was just pretending to be a soldier during the daily training sessions. She wasn't weak by any measure, but no one bothered to notice because she never stood out from the crowd. She completed every exercise adequately, never failed a test, but never excelled either. One instructor commented to his colleague, "She never gets a single move wrong, but she never shows anything exceptional either. It's like she's deliberately staying invisible. What made others notice her, just enough to tease, she never ever exposed her back skin, even during the most brutal punishment runs in blazing 110-degree heat. While other recruits stripped down to tank tops, she kept her long-sleeved shirt buttoned up tight. One recruit joked during a water break, probably scared to show some butterfly tattoo or something, maybe a unicorn or her ex-boyfriend's name. The others laughed, but Samara just kept drinking her water, eyes fixed on the horizon. Then came advanced physical training day, the obstacle course from hell. That's when everything changed. While climbing the rope barrier, the barbed wire at the top caught Samara's shirt and tore it wide open from shoulder to shoulder. A tattoo appeared, a stark black symbol, 3 jagged lines forming a triangle around a broken arrow, with the number 011 slanted sideways beneath it. The soldiers gathered around, laughing loudly. A dragon? Some American cartoon superhero thing? Right then, an old colonel walking by for his daily inspection stopped dead in his tracks, stared at the symbol with wide eyes. He whispered loud enough for everyone to hear, "That ink is classified. Nobody touch her." The entire training yard went silent. I trained near Samara for 2 weeks. Nobody thought she was anything special. But once I tripped during rifle inspection, my weapon flew from my hands, and she, in a split second, grabbed the rifle midair and disarmed it with just 2 precise moves. I've never seen anyone react that fast or with that level of skill at this training camp. Have you ever seen someone completely underestimated, but had something that made you suspect they weren't normal? Type, I felt it. Colonel Loring made an urgent, encrypted call to Central Command right after the training session ended. "Sir, she shouldn't be here. The Phantom 011 symbol was completely erased from all military records in 2012. This is a code black situation." Orders came down within the hour. Continue letting her train with the group, but absolutely no performance evaluations. Monitor her every move, but don't let her know. And under no circumstances should anyone ask her about the tattoo. Internally, chaos erupted. A few young intelligence officers secretly looked up the tattoo code in every database they could access, found absolutely nothing. No records, no files, no mention anywhere in the system. One called it a ghost symbol from a unit that never existed. Another whispered, or a unit so classified that even we don't have clearance. 3 nights later, a decorated veteran made an unscheduled visit to the camp. General Morrison, a man who'd served in every major conflict of the last 2 decades. He was touring the facilities when he spotted Samara from across the mess hall. The general stopped mid-conversation, stared at her for a full 30 seconds, then turned and walked away without finishing his inspection. He left the base immediately. That man was General Arlen Morrison, former commander of Phantom Squad operations from 2010 to 2012. The soldiers whispered among themselves in hushed tones, "Is she a disgraced soldier trying to hide her past? Did she violate classified protocols and get her identity scrubbed? Maybe she's undercover, testing us somehow." Samara remained completely silent about everything. She went through the motions of training, eating, sleeping, never acknowledging the stares or the whispered conversations that stopped when she walked by. But one night during advanced tactical testing, her team got stuck on a complex bomb disposal scenario. The mock device had 5 layers of security, each requiring different disarmament techniques. The instructor had designed it to be impossible for trainees to complete. After 2 hours of failed attempts, the instructor said, "If no one knows the proper sequence, we'll stop here. This is graduate-level material anyway." Samara stepped forward without a word, knelt beside the device, and began working. She dismantled each layer methodically, never hesitating, never double-checking the manual. Her hands moved with the confidence of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. Layer 1, disabled in 30 seconds. Layer 2, bypassed in 20 seconds. Layer 3, neutralized in 15 seconds. Layer 4, disarmed in 10 seconds. Layer 5, diffused in 5 seconds. Total time, 1 minute and 20 seconds. The instructor stared at his stopwatch, then at Samara, then back at the completely disarmed device. He asked in a shaky voice, "Recruit Trent, who taught you to disarm a 5-layer explosive device?" She stood up, brushed the dust off her knees, and looked him directly in the eyes. Her voice was steady, emotionless. "Sir, if this had been a real bomb, I would still be alive. My teammates would still be alive. That's all that matters." She walked away, leaving 23 other recruits and 2 instructors staring at the disabled device in complete silence. Have you ever met someone who didn't need to prove themselves with words? Their actions said everything? Type. I know that type. One rainy Thursday night, the camp's emergency alert system activated. Red lights flashed throughout the compound. The announcement came over the loudspeakers. "This is a drill. All personnel to assigned positions." This is a drill, but the senior staff knew better. The code sequence wasn't for a drill. It was real. Command Center went into lockdown mode, all systems automatically shutting down to prevent data breach. The problem was, nobody had the override codes. The base was completely paralyzed, sitting ducks for whatever threat was coming. Colonel Loring frantically tried every authorization code he knew. Nothing worked. The base's defensive systems were offline, communications were down, and they had no way to call for backup. That's when Samara appeared at the command center door. She didn't ask permission. She didn't explain herself. She simply walked up to the main security panel and pressed her dog tag against the scanner. The kind of identification card that had been deactivated and removed from the system over 10 years ago. The door clicked open immediately. Everyone in the command center turned to stare as she walked calmly to the master control station. She placed her hand on the biometric scanner, and the main screens lit up with information that made Colonel Loring's blood run cold. The display read, "Phantom Recon Override, accepted. Agent 011, status, active. Final protocol authorization, granted." Within seconds, the base's entire defensive grid came online. Weapon systems activated, communications restored, threat assessment complete. The incoming attack neutralized before it could even begin. Colonel Loring immediately contacted Central Command with shaking hands. "Sir, she wasn't erased from our records. She was planted here, and her authorization code, it's the final activation protocol that only triggers when all other systems are compromised." The voice on the other end was grim. "Colonel, you need to understand what you're dealing with. Access her real file. Authorization code, Phantom Final 011. The classified file that appeared on screen revealed everything. In 2012, Phantom Squad 011 was tasked with intercepting a stolen strategic AI device that had fallen into enemy hands. The device contained protocols that could shut down entire military networks across the country. The mission was so classified that officially it never happened. The entire 6-person squad went missing during the operation. For 3 years, they were presumed dead, but only one person survived the mission, carrying the final auto-response key embedded in her memory and authorization codes. That person was Samara Trent, and she was classified as non-existent for national security reasons. Central Command had made a decision that haunted them for years: place her in living standby status. No active missions assigned, no official recognition, no military records. She would live a normal life until the day when the entire system faced a threat it couldn't handle. If the military's primary systems ever got breached, if all other options failed, she would unconsciously be drawn back to where she was needed most. And that night, with the base under real attack and all systems down, it happened exactly as planned. She saved the entire camp from a coordinated assault that could have killed hundreds of personnel. No one else could have reacted in time because no one else had the access codes. The next morning, a black sedan arrived at the base. General Arlen Morrison stepped out, still wearing his dress uniform despite being officially retired. He walked directly to Samara, who was sitting alone in the mess hall, eating breakfast like nothing had happened. He stopped in front of her table and did something that shocked everyone who witnessed it. He saluted her. Then he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Agent 011, you are the final protection layer we never had the right to command. We can never thank you enough for what you've carried alone." Samara looked up at him, nodded once, and went back to eating her breakfast. Have you ever known someone who silently kept everyone safe, without anyone realizing what they sacrificed? Type, "I owe them." 3 days after the incident, Samara submitted a formal request to leave the training camp. She refused any medals, commendations, or official recognition for her actions. Her written statement was simple: "I don't want to be called by name or rank. I just want to ensure no one else dies because we forgot the lessons of the past." But her impact on the base was undeniable. Something had fundamentally changed in how the recruits approached their training. They stopped joking around. They started taking every exercise seriously. They realized that in the real world, the person sitting next to you might be the only thing standing between you and death. 2 weeks later, the training center quietly opened a new course: Unofficial Data Preservation Strategy, for senior command personnel only. The curriculum covered protocols for maintaining critical information outside official channels, preparing for system failures, and recognizing assets that don't appear in standard records. No one knew who wrote the training materials, but the first page had a single line in small print: "Not everyone gets written in history books, but they write the history that matters." 011, a hand-drawn picture appeared on the mess hall bulletin board. A black-haired woman in military fatigues, face turned away, with a phantom symbol visible on her back. Below it, someone had written, "Real soldiers don't need fame. They just need to stay alive to do what's right." The picture was never officially authorized, but no one ever took it down. 6 months later, recruits who had never met Samara would point to that picture and tell new arrivals, "That's the ghost of Zone 9. She saved this whole base and nobody even knows her real name." The legend grew with each telling, but the core message remained the same. Sometimes the most important people are the ones you never hear about. Type, "I will keep my promise." If you believe there are people who just need to be understood, not celebrated. They used to laugh at her tattoo. They thought it was just kid stuff or some meaningless symbol she'd gotten on a dare. But that tattoo was the mark of the final soldier class. People who aren't allowed to die, but also aren't allowed to live publicly. They exist in the spaces between official records, carrying responsibilities that would crush most people. Some people aren't born to train alongside others. They're born to activate at the exact moment when the entire system has no one left to trust. When all the official channels have failed, when the only thing standing between survival and catastrophe is someone who was prepared for the worst-case scenario. Samara didn't need to prove herself to anyone. She had been chosen long before she ever set foot in that training camp. She only appeared when loyalty, silence, and other people's lives needed her most. The real lesson isn't about secret soldiers or classified missions. It's about recognizing that the most important people in your life might be the ones who never ask for recognition, who do what's right without expecting praise, who sacrifice their own comfort so others can sleep safely. You just heard a story that official files don't contain, but real life does. These are the people who keep the world running while the rest of us sleep. They don't get parades or medals. They get the satisfaction of knowing they did what was necessary when it mattered most. Subscribe to SN Quiet Stories if you want to hear more about the unsung heroes around us. We tell these stories so those who live quietly for higher ideals don't get buried in oblivion. Share this with someone who serves others without expecting anything in return.